Welcome to Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairytales. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Christianson. Look, you know that between the latest online fads and the crazy media headlines, it's easier than ever to get confused about your health. And you and I just want to feel better and live longer. We want to know what works. And we can't wait for further studies. We need to make decisions today based on the best evidence we've got. Well, that's exactly what this show is here for. So let's get to it. Hey, Dr. Alan Christianson here. Welcome to another episode. Today I'm joined with my good friend, Dr. Trevor Cates. Trevor's got a new book out, and this is the Natural Beauty Reset, the best-selling new book, Spa Doctor's 7-Day Program to Harmonize Hormones and Restore Radiance. Great book. She and I talk about it, some really unique things to it. She's also the founder of thespadoctor.com and the associated skincare line. And I just want to say the book has just so many phenomenal recipes. And these are fine for all the maintenance stages for the thyroid reset diet, the adrenal reset diet, and the metabolism reset diet. So you got a lot of good ones to work with. And wide range of ingredients, really good flavors, great stuff. So we talk a lot about how this is different in that it's a program to help your body adapt to the changes in seasons. Super important for hormonal balance, but we don't hear enough about that. So please enjoy this discussion with Dr. Trevor Cates. Hey, Dr. C with you, and I'm really happy to be here with my dear friend, Dr. Trevor Cates. Trevor, how the heck are you doing?
Good. I'm great. Things are going great. Got a new book out, docu-series, and newly married, and all kinds of good stuff going on.
I'm so happy for you. All cool things. Well, this is what I really wanted people to know about. So one thing I love about this that's really different that we don't see elsewhere is the focus upon the seasons. I think all too often we get stuck in the idea that, what we do, we should just do, ongoing and not really change or adapt. But you really talked about the importance of seasonal variations. And what I want to hear first off, like what inspires you to go into that side of it? What really brought up that part of it into the discussion?
Yeah, well, I realized that I was recommending this for my patients, but it wasn't something that I talked about in my last book. And I felt kind of bad that I was saying this to my patients, but I had not managed to put it in my last book. So, and then another thing is a lot of my patients were asking me, and people who read my first book, they had questions about hormones. It's like women have so many questions about hormones, as you know, and they are complex and oftentimes can be overwhelming. And so I wanted to really lay that out in this book. And one of the things that I think is important, particularly for women, is to actually adjust with the seasons. And I think that that really does help with our hormones. And then our hormones change throughout the seasons and our bodies change. And so should our practices, our food, movement, mindset, skincare practices need to change with each season to help us with adjusting.
That's cool. And I think many come to understand hormones as like the gateway between lifestyle and health. Our lifestyle changes our hormones, or hormones change our health. But yeah, tell us more about the seasonal differences with hormones. I think many people understand about like a seasons of life almost, like, adolescence, menopause, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, let's talk about the seasons of the year and how our hormonal needs can change because of them.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that changes with the season is the location of the sun, right? So our day length changes, the sunlight hours change depending upon the season. And during the summer season, we have longer amounts of time of sunlight exposure. And then in winter, we have shorter, and then fall and spring, we're kind of somewhere in between. And with that change, of course, I think a lot of people think about food changing, right? Like certain foods will grow at certain seasons. I think a lot of people think of that, but our hormones also shift with different seasons too. So like, for example, it was really interesting, really diving into the research and looking at some of the studies that show these hormonal shifts. And so like, a lot of times people know that in springtime is known as a time of fertility. And, that's a lot but it's interesting that in spring and early summer is when a lot of times estrogen starts to go up. A lot of women have higher estrogen. Even perimenopausal women will have like these higher amounts of estrogen. And our thyroid hormone can change with the changes with temperatures. Our body adjusts. It's amazing how our body will adjust to that. And so that changes. Testosterone tends to go up in the fall A lot of experts think that that's because we get a higher amounts of vitamin D in the summer, and then that can cause a lift in our testosterone. And so these are some of the changes that can happen. And then also things like melatonin can shift a little bit too, because when we have more darkness in the days and less sunlight, then that can shift and make changes with our melatonin. And so all of this, and then of course there's things like serotonin and cortisol, right, that affect more of our mood, right? So cortisol tends to be lower in the summer, when we're like less stress and outdoors more and more sunlight. And then in the wintertime, our cortisol levels can go up. So lower in the summer, and then a little higher in the winter time. And then, during the fall, it can start to creep up as well. And then serotonin, which really helps with, and it's more thought of more of as a neurotransmitter, but it's also hormone of like helping with our mood, right? And so that can tend to drop in the winter time. And so if we know these shifts and changes with our hormones, and of course, these are generalizations. Not everybody has exactly these patterns, but they are these patterns, and it has a lot to do with the sunlight. And when we have less sunlight, we have less, we're not outdoors as much, it actually impacts our behavior and it impacts our hormones, as they kind of go hand in hand. So when we make shifts, especially if we look at how can we make changes, especially in the fall season, before we get to winter? So before our serotonin has dropped and our cortisol has gone up, and these changes, how can we help our bodies transition so that we don't go through drops in our mood or big shifts and changes that can make it harder to have healthy lifestyle choices?
That's great. And your focus with this book has been about the theme about the spa doctor and the relative comparison between inner beauty and outer beauty, and how to control both of those. So given that, what's the tie with the gut, with foods and microbiomes? So how is it that we can change what we eat and then change how our body uses these hormones throughout the seasons?
Yeah, absolutely. Our gut health has a huge impact on our skin and our hormones. And that's, big focus in the book is skin and hormones. My last book, Clean Skin from Within, was really just focused on skin and that inner health for skin. And I talked a lot about gut in that book, and the importance of the gut microbiome, and that in turn helping the skin microbiome. And I talk about that in this book too, but also it really helps with our hormones. And so a lot of what we want to do to help with supporting our hormones is getting back to our gut health. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, if I have a hormone problem, I should fix it with hormones, which, can be helpful. Bioidentical hormones I talk about in the book, and they can play a role for women in their, perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal years. But we don't want to skip over the healthy foundation that we want to build with our, the foods that we eat, our mindset practices, and even skincare. And we're exposed to so many hormone disrupting chemicals in our environment, including our personal care products. So we really want to be mindful of all of that. But going back to the gut, we just living a life in, taking things like antibiotics, being in a stressful environment. It can be the way, our lifestyle choices as far as the foods that we've been eating, the hygiene practices, like overzealous hygiene, can actually impact our gut microbiome and our skin microbiome. And so those things can disrupt our gut microbiome, which in turn then impacts our brain health, our neurochemistry, our endocrinology, our hormones. And so what we want to do is just get that back into a balanced state so that our body can function as it was like so wisely designed.
So overzealous hygiene. I haven't heard that phrase before, but that makes a lot of sense. So what are some examples of that? Like how do we get too clean?
Yeah, I know. And so it's great to feel clean and to, take a good shower and do all those great things. But sometimes we go overboard. And I think we have a little bit of germophobia in our society, and that we have to bleach everything and, use harsh cleansers and all of these things. And there's a balance with that. So when we, just like when we take antibiotics, we kill off the bad bacteria, but we also kill off the good bacteria. And then there can be consequences of that. So when we have overzealous hygiene practices, it's kind of a similar concept, like where you're just wiping out everything. And there actually are beneficial microorganisms that live on the body, in the body, around the body. And we can, when we're using cleaning products in our homes that have harsh cleansing agents, or we're using harsh cleansers on our body, on our face, and our hair, those also can disrupt the microbiome. And so while we want good hygiene practices, we don't want overzealous hygiene practices.
So you put a lot of work into figuring out safer ways to go about doing skincare, and you've got a real great line that I've recommended before and always do. What are some of the things that some ingredients people should think about avoiding in terms of things that are endocrine disruptors, or just too aggressively sanitizing or sterilizing or hurting the microbiome? What are some big things you want to steer clear of that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals in personal care products. And I'm sure you've talked to your followers about all of the different ways we're exposed to these in our air, water, food, personal care products, and how when you have adrenal or thyroid or any other hormone problems, you really want to be mindful of reducing your total load to these exposures, because they can completely disrupt the functioning of our hormones, and the ways that the receptors, the hormone receptors, and all of that, how they're functioning, because they can bind to those and create all kinds of havoc. So when we look at skincare products, there are a number of ingredients that can create issues. And I know a lot of times people forget that what we put on our skin, what we spray in the air around us, what we put on our hair, all of those things, they can get into our bodies. These ingredients do get into our bodies. And that, because they can work their way into circulation, they can have really harmful effects on the body. So things like fragrance. Fragrance is listed as a single ingredient on cleaning products, a lot of the products we use in our home, as well as personal care products. But fragrance oftentimes contains a number of endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so there's like diethyl phthalate is an example in fragrance, and it's used to help the fragrance last longer. But it's a plasticizing agent, and phthalates are known endocrine disrupting chemicals. And studies have shown that they do show up in human samples. They do get absorbed through the skin with personal care products. So fragrance is a big one. And I know that sometimes that's a hard one because people want to smell good, right?
So I'm sorry, but that just, so phthalates can fall under the label as fragrance, you're saying?
So diethyl phthalate it's an ingredient in fragrance. Yes.
Okay. So it may say nothing more than fragrance on the label.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Right. And that's just one example. There can be a number of other ones, but that's a very common ingredient in fragrance. And so we want to look for instead things that are fragrance free, or that have like organic essential oils, natural fragrance, right? So those can be a much better alternative. And the nice thing about essential oils is not only do they not have these, concerns like diethyl phthalates do, but they have mood boosting benefits potentially, and they can have natural antimicrobial effects without disrupting the microbiome. And so they're a much better alternative. Of course, that's what we use at the Spa Doctor skincare products. We use organic essential oils. And then there are also, I think a lot of people have heard about parabens are another one that are in skincare, personal care products. And I'm still surprised to see that even some of the so-called natural products contain parabens. And you'll see paraben at the end of the word. There are a lot of different types, and they are known estrogen mimickers. They've shown up in breast tumor tissues, and so definitely one we want to avoid. And the good news is that while parabens are used as a preservative, there are so many alternatives to those now. And so look for other alternatives. And I do want to make people aware that just because a product says it's natural, does not mean that it is. The words
Mm.
natural and hypoallergenic actually have zero regulations, zero in the United States. Anyone can call their products natural. There's nothing that the FDA can come after and say, hey, but your products have these things. And it's really interesting as a naturopathic physician for 22 years and then making skincare products for 7 years, how interesting it's been. Unfortunately, the personal care product industry, skincare industry is kind of a shady industry, and that there's a lot of marketing hype. And so right now there's a trend towards natural. So all these companies are creating a natural line, or they're buying up smaller brands of natural skincare lines, and then they'll list a natural ingredient like, oh, contains green tea extract or CoQ10, and then it's all natural. But then if you start to look more closely at the label, you'll see fragrance or parabens. Wow. Or, a sunscreen, you'll see things like oxybenzone, which is unfortunately, another endocrine disrupting chemical.
When I hear that, I think that word does carry a lot of weight for consumers. I've often talked to consumers about being concerned in particular ingredients to think about in their cosmetics. And the comeback I often hear is, well, but I buy natural products.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I think you're right. That's a concern.
Yeah, it is a huge concern because it's when I started making natural products, there weren't as many as there are now, but I've seen so many more companies come on board with having a natural line. And so it's become more work to educate our patients, our followers, on understanding what to actually look for, because the word natural actually doesn't mean anything anymore. Now, when it says organic, there are regulations around organic, but it only has to have a certain percentage of an organic ingredient. So it depends on how clean of a product you want. And, if a product is, over 85% organic, that's pretty good. I mean, there are some ingredients that you just can't find organic. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're looking at certain natural preservatives and things, we look for wild crafted and things like that. But sometimes it's hard to find organic ingredients. But for the most part, you don't want just one or two organic ingredients. You want most of the ingredients, if not 100%, all of the ingredients natural. And, there are also DIY skincare options too that you can make in your kitchen. You have to make fresh batches, but that's one of the things that I have recipes of, and Natural Beauty Reset is a bunch of DIY skincare recipes too for people who really want to be pure with their products.
I was going to mention those. One thing so this is it's not proper to call it a cookbook per se, but there's so many, is that, or there's so many good recipes in it though.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of recipes in there, but definitely a lot of it is, learning about how your hormones work, how your neurochemistry works, and from more of a natural perspective of how do we get back to our natural rhythms of the seasons. And then in part 2, I talk about each season, and I give a 7-day reset for each season for food, movement, mindset, and skincare. And then in the back of the book, you'll find lots of recipes.
So it's not a cookbook, but it's a book with recipes. So there's a simple mathematical formula. In case you're ever wondering how many books with recipes you should have in your kitchen, here's a really easy formula. You can always get. Have you ever heard this before? Do you know this?
No.
So this is cool. Yeah, it's a simple formula. So what you want to do is first see how many books, cookbooks or books with recipes you have in your kitchen right now. So you tally it up and you get that number and you write that number down. And the correct number of recipe books you have in your kitchen is that number plus 1.
Right. Perfect. I love that, Alan. I completely agree.
That's what I tell my wife all the time. I said, oh, honey, but we need just one more.
I know. And it's funny because I've got some cookbooks in my and on my shelf that aren't really just all like clean and natural, but I've learned how to do substitutions. So I'll pull it out. I'm like, sometimes there's a classic that you want to make, but if you know enough about, making healthy recipes, then you'll learn how to like sub out other ones.
So speaking of which, one that I just jumped to is your dad's oatmeal raisin cookies.
Yeah. Bopaz cookies. My dad, I grew up with my dad couldn't eat eggs or wheat. He was allergic. So I grew up in a wheat-free home, which was pretty unique. And we lived on an organic farm. So my parents were pretty health conscious. And so my dad, he liked to have a treat every now and then. So he got creative and he would sweeten it with fruit juice and put fresh fruit in it and chop it up, or raisins, depending upon and oats and things like that, gluten-free oats. And so when unfortunately my dad passed a few years ago, and he never wrote down the recipe. And so, but we watched him make it enough times that my daughter Talia, who's 15 and she loves to bake, because we went in the kitchen, we're like, we're going to figure out how to make Bopaz cookies, and we did. It was fun. They're delicious.
I saw those, and there's so many good ones. There's a few that really jumped out, and a couple of these were winter. I mean, I guess it's still fall, kind of close to winter up here, but the barley porridge with pears. Yeah, that one, I actually made that one a couple of mornings ago, and that was so good.
Good. Yeah. It's funny because I think a lot of people don't think about barley. I like to, with my recipes, encourage people to try some things that they may not normally eat. And the thing is, eating seasonally, what it helps you do is it helps you encourage you to eat things, get creative, eat some new foods, because while some people say, I've got my superfoods that I eat the same thing, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I eat super healthy, and I eat all these superfoods. But the problem is that even so-called superfoods, if you're not eating a variety of them, they actually can cause some harmful effects. Like, as you know, high oxalate foods, for example, get too many of those can lead to kidney stones, tinnitus, ringing in the ears, things like that. So we have to kind of mix up our foods a little bit. And so if you eat seasonally, it helps you do that, so that you're not eating the exact same things over and over again. It also helps your microbiome diversity, when you eat a variety of different produce.
Yeah, there's so much more data now emerging about that exact concept, the number of types of food you can get in, and rotating is a great way to achieve that. The one last one just to highlight was the warming venison stew. I haven't made that yet, but that looks excellent. I love making stews like that. So yeah.
Yes. And a lot of my recipes are vegetarian, but I also have some meat. So, like, I think of eating a lot of our foods plant-based, and then, also including some protein, animal protein. So you actually could eat that stew as, you can choose other types of meat. You could do vegetarian, but the idea is even animal protein has seasons. There are certain times that they're typically raised, and when they're, and so when they're actually, it's more sustainable for the planet to eat those animals at certain times of the year, which as I was doing more research on it, I realized there's more on this than I even knew about. And growing up on a farm, I kind of knew this a little bit, but it was really cool to see this, because I think we've really lost touch with nature and how food really grows when we let it. We grow so much of our food in these environments where it's just not particularly healthy for us, and it's like genetically modified so that it'll grow at certain times and mass produced. And I think if we could get back to the wisdom of nature and how food really does grow where we live, then I think that we not only will it taste better because it's more flavorful, but also it's more nutrient dense. And it's better for the environment as well. So I really encourage people to do that. And I know some people think, well, I live in Arizona or California or somewhere where there's not really distinct seasons, but there still are changes. I was just in Arizona a few days ago, and it's cooler now. Like it used to be super, super hot, and now it's not so hot. So there's still seasons.
Those are the two seasons.
Yeah, but the sun is still shifting, the days, or the length of days, are changing. And so that still means that our body goes through shifts, and our food does too.
There's so much strong data on that. Many years ago, I wrote the Adrenal Reset Diet. I was looking at the things that affect the circadian rhythm, the cortisol cycle, and the sunlight, the duration, the timing. And it was amazing how, like you said, the duration of the days, but then the seasons, then also whether tomorrow is shorter than today or whether tomorrow is longer than today. that completely changes the whole cascade of events in the body's hormone regulation. So we get when that all changes. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. And I think that we've gotten so much away from that because we live so much indoors and we're on our computers. And so while I understand there are a lot of really great benefits to modern living and, electricity and, our favorite TV shows and movies and things like that, to find this nice balance of spending some time outdoors, walking in nature, watching the sunsets, really just doing what you can to get that back in, because it really does help your circadian rhythm, your hormonal balance, being aware of the food and its cycles and how it can nourish your body can make a huge difference. Instead of just like, what can I take for this problem? Like, how can you support your body and shifting your lifestyle? And don't expect it to change overnight. It does take time. That's why I created it as a 7-day reset, because it kind of immerse yourself for 7 days in it and then figure out what really resonates with you, what really works for you, and then continue that through the season. And then you get to do it again for the next season.
I think this is such a great book and such a great program within it. I highly recommend people to get this. And this is something to where it's not just a matter of reading it, putting it down, even just referring to recipes. This is something you want to go through on a regular basis throughout the year. Each season, get in the habit of doing the reset, thinking through what are your staple foods, what are some ones you're missing you could add back in, how can your habits change and adapt and update, and make this as part of the overall lifestyle. Highly recommended. So where's the best place for someone to pick this up?
Wherever you like getting your books, Amazon, super easy. It's really nice to, if you like it and you go on Amazon, leave a review, that's always nice too. But you could go to our website, we have it there. You could go to naturalbeautyreset.com, where you could get some bonuses to help complement the book. We've got some workbooks and things. So if you go and you buy it somewhere, you go back to Natural Beauty Reset and put in your order number and your email, we'll send you some digital bonuses that you can enjoy. So that's naturalbeautyreset.com. And we also suggest some different places where you can buy the book.
We'll get those links up too. And I don't know if I just throw something in there. Some books are great in Kindle format. This is a really nice one to have the physical format of the book. It's beautiful. It's full color and, nice stock. This is something you can hold on to, and it can stand the rigors of living in the kitchen. It can get beat up, but it can take some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great that we wanted to have lots of color pictures in here. So it is full color. So it is pretty. I mean, it's also available on Audible. I read the book. That was my first time
doing
yourself.
What's that? That's cool. You get to read it yourself.
To read it. It's, and it's a fairly short book. So, but what you get is you get a supplementary PDF with it. So you still get all the recipes and all that good stuff. But if you just still like to listen to your books rather than read them, that's possible too.
Sure. Dr. Trevor Cates, thank you so much for putting this out and taking some time with us today. And always good to see you. Yeah,
great to see you too, Alan.
All right, everyone, take care. Thanks for being here with another episode of Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. And we'll talk again really soon. Bye-bye. Hey, Dr. Christianson here. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode. Is there a topic you'd like me to cover? I'd love to hear from you. Just go to Dr. Alan Christianson on Facebook or Instagram, write your question, and use the hashtag #MedicalMyths. Did you find this show helpful? If so, please take a minute and leave us a rating on iTunes so that others can know. Thanks much, and I'll be back with you real soon. Bye-bye.